Sophie, and this is POVz, the show where we dive deep into the Gen Z point of view to better understand where we're all coming from so we can unify the world. Today, I'm joined by 4 amazing young people who all have different opinions when it comes to dating and relationships. So today, we're going to talk. We may get a little uncomfortable, but we are going to find a way to better understand each other's points of view. And my favorite part about this show is that we frame the entire conversation here around real perspectives from real young people. So what you'll hear today is both a combination of the perspectives of the 4 amazing people next to me and from the larger Gen Z community. So if you have something to say when it comes to dating and relationships, we want to hear from you. Send us a text. You'll see the number on the screen. We want to hear your point of view featured on this episode or a future episode. So can't wait for your voice to be heard. But let's dive in. Let's talk about dating. Today we're here to talk about all things relationships, a topic that I'm sure all of us are not foreign to. We've got a lot to say. So let's start with this question. Have dating apps ruined dating?
Yes. I think I should preface this. I do obviously use dating apps. It's kind of like the norm. But I think it's desensitized us to especially when you're in a bar or something. I feel like people don't really know how to communicate with each other anymore. I think it that, and just the fact that we're also in the age of social media, people don't portray themselves truthfully. So you'll think you're going to meet Tom, but you're really meeting Tim, and it's whoa, what happened? I don't know. I think it's a weird falsehood is kind of around dating. And I just don't trust people.
I totally agree with that, and I acknowledge that that is one of the many faults of dating apps. But I've been using dating apps since I was 17, and that's how I found most of my serious relationships is through dating apps. And also, just so you know, I've never gone on a date with a straight cis white man from a dating app. I've only dated mostly women, so in that sense I feel a lot more safer meeting up with women that I don't know from a dating app. But I don't think that dating apps are ruining dating, because for me, especially as a queer person, it also makes it a lot easier to find other queer people, because I feel like I wouldn't be comfortable just going up to a girl at a bar and being hey, I think you're cute, because what if they aren't interested in women? What if they aren't available? All of those things. But I do recognize a lot of the negativities around dating apps.
I do have to yeah. I think I'm pan, so I obviously just date around the spectrum. But as someone that I would say does lean toward men, unfortunately, I can't completely agree, because gay men are still men, and men are just, no. Men are just I don't even know the word to use.
We can have a whole other episode about men.
So I think as far as dating men, I've always felt weird and uncomfortable. I don't know. I feel sometimes
I have a
they can be
question.
judgmental.
Are you uncomfortable while you're going through the apps, or when you match with somebody and you meet up with them? Has it been, you don't even have to talk about your own experience, but do you hear about a lot of uncomfortable experiences once you're there, or is it more just getting there?
When I'm there.
Okay.
Also because I've heard a lot of bad experiences, and I've had a few weird experiences. So I don't know. It always feels you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And I'm Scorpio.
Yeah.
So I want to add on, because I feel I don't understand why dating apps haven't made a requirement to verify yourself, because that's a really big safety thing. Because we still allow Tinder, for example, we still allow them to have profiles with no blue star, blue check, or whatever.
Some platforms
some
verify,
of them, yes,
right?
but you have to take a picture of yourself. But some people don't even do that.
Yeah, it's an option.
It's not a requirement, but it's a safety issue at the same time. So I don't understand why we haven't moved towards that direction yet. Because you're meeting basically a total stranger. You should at least have them be verified, so at least you're meeting. This is their person. This is their age. This is what they look like.
Well, something interesting for me is I feel I don't know if it's because of where I grew up and the bubble. I'm from Long Island and I moved to the city, so it's not a big, far change. And a lot of people that I kind of grew up around, a lot of people that are similar to me, a lot of people that are Jewish are kind of around where I live. So I feel like for me on dating apps and a lot of my friends on dating apps, we actually use it as a tool to meet people in a way that it might be a little harder with timing or luck in an organic way, but the person has like mutual friends, and then you kind of recognize them, or you see that they grew up in a town where you know someone and you can kind of play that game in a way. So it's an introduction that you can get that you might not necessarily get organically at a bar, because it's sometimes really hard to do that.
For sure.
But
As someone who's been on Bumble BFF,
I was on Bumble BFF.
even that is scary to
It
like
is.
reach out to someone and make a new connection. But
Yeah.
I don't know, some say that the platforms make it easier because it kind of, it expedites the process, but I totally hear what everyone is saying about them being more difficult.
Well, I guess to like play against my own actual
Please.
position, I think the one good thing about it is that, especially like for people that are shy, that aren't as outspoken or going, it's definitely a big tool. It's definitely probably a confidence booster, because you don't have to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. You have the choice to be like, I'm gonna go on this app, I'm gonna meet up with you, I'm gonna allow you to have access to me. So I guess in
Right,
that
it's
way,
extra accessibility, where
Yes.
like the truth is dating apps not being a part of our culture is a whole other animal,
For sure.
but having it is just another way, a new way
A
to
tool.
meet someone.
Yeah.
So like you don't need to use it at all, but because it is a part of our culture, if you don't use it, are you at a disadvantage?
Mhm.
I
And are
don't know.
y'all currently dating? Like, can we like DTR?
Okay, fine.
No.
No?
I haven't been on dating apps since the end of 2021. So I've because I had a really horrible traumatic dating experience.
Do you need to unpack that?
We can.
This would be the place.
He goes,
Yeah.
he goes,
safe space.
we can.
No, it's great. No, it's fine. Like I was dating this guy, and it was great. I think I was so into him because he was so communicative, and people these days they can't even respond to a simple text, And he responded right away. I was like green flag, but I feel like because of that, I ignored other red flags because I was like, the standard was so low. Like if you just meet the bare minimum, I was into you. You know what I mean?
I think we should take a quick break. So we'll be right back.
Those are
Thank
like
you.
hot.
Okay, we are back. I'm so excited to take us into our next segment here on POVz. You've probably seen us do something like this before, but this is where we're going to bring in the Gen Z community. We're going to bring in real points of view from real young people, and they're a little spicy, but I think we can handle it so we can better understand what other people are thinking outside the group. Okay, we ready?
Yes.
Okay, this first text says, TBH, I feel like situationships only exist so men can avoid commitment. Agree,
Slay.
disagree.
Very much so.
Gosh, everyone agrees.
Yeah.
Okay, why? Tell me why.
I think that, the way that I think about it is that we're still like stuck in like caveman brain, like the way like our brains haven't like necessarily like advanced that much past like function versus like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know what I'm getting at. So and I think men are just naturally like they want sex. Like I like not to like generalize them, but I think they're very sexually driven creatures. So I think it's easier for them to have something that they can always have without having the actual like attachment to it, because they still get what they want and give you as much as they need to give you, and they still like they win
I
in a
agree.
situationship.
I agree with that, but I also disagree because I feel like there are different types of situationships, and one is kind of non-committal because they just want something sexual out of it, and then there are others that come from like past trauma in relationships and whatever your history is, and a lot of people like can't jump right into a relationship, and maybe the other person is ready and they're not from past trauma, so it's like a difficult line because I've been in situations where I'm not ready to commit, and it's not because of anything sexual, but just because of timing and where I'm at. So, and it's interesting whether or not like it's a good or a bad thing. I don't know.
I just want to rebuttal to that. So if you know, like, hey, because of past trauma, if I'm not in a relationship, I don't want to be in a relationship, why put yourself out there or be on a dating app in the first place, or try to or start even talking to them?
So I think as human beings,
Ditto.
we crave human connection.
Do you make that clear from the get go, or do you just still talk and when it comes up, then you say it?
Well, I think it depends, because like Sophie said, everybody wants ultimately that goal in the end, but when you're pursuing a relationship, there are ups and downs, and titles is a big thing, and maybe you've had some sort of experience where you're struggling with that, so you don't want to jump into it because of that. It doesn't mean you don't want to get there eventually, but it's really hard sometimes to be on the same page as people, and that's where situationships come, and it's a dangerous road, I think.
But that's why communication is so fucking important in relationships. Even if you're in a mutual situationship, like checking in on each other, saying like, oh, hey, I really like getting to know you and I want to continue getting to know you, but I do have trauma from this past relationship, and this is why, but I want to keep pursuing things at a slow pace. And if they're not wanting to do that, then they can leave. But if, just making that clear from the get-go with communication.
I could not agree more. As someone who's been in a very long-term relationship, on the very first day of us dating, Eli, my partner, he was like, the only rule I have for our relationship ever for the rest of time is we have to communicate. Yeah. Otherwise, this relationship will never work. And that's been like the only thing we've prioritized from day one. And it worked. So I totally resonate. And I think so often in relationships, we talk about love languages, but I think something we don't talk about is communication love languages. And I think it's also about knowing where your partner stands in terms of how they communicate their feelings or what boundaries they need. And so I thank you for bringing that up. It's huge.
So completely unrelated, but I just wanted to let you know I love your relationship. Literally, I think you guys are so cute, and I just wanted to tell you that I haven't think you guys told you anything out.
Yeah, Eli's the greatest person on the planet. But I do want to bring up another topic. Yeah. Carly, I think what you said about everyone wanting the same thing in the end made me question that. Like, I think I've grown up my whole life thinking that monogamy is it. Like, that's what society has taught me. That's what I see in the media. Like, I was taught to believe that we all want to get married and we all want to have kids and we all want the same thing in the end. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. I'm a polygamist, so I don't necessarily. Why can't I speak? But necessarily agree with monogamy. I think it's something that's been instilled in all of us. It's not something that we've ever Not that I'm saying I shouldn't generalize, but that we've taken the time to actually see if that works with our lifestyle, how we want to live our lives. I know for me it was it's always been more of a religious thing, and I think when I kind of started to step away from religion, I'm more of a spiritual person now. So when I kind of started to step away from it, I started to realize that it was more about what my mom wanted or what this person wanted, what society told me I should want, versus me actually thinking that I was meant to be with just one person. And not that I'm saying that I would ever I'm completely denying monogamy. I might meet someone that makes me want to be no, everyone go away from me, I don't know, and then I find that person, but I don't know, I think it's just a little unhealthy to put all your feelings, all of your wants, all of your needs into one person and expect them to give you everything that you ever wanted back.
Interesting.
I think I think it's unfair.
Does anyone disagree with that?
I respect it and I understand it, but I think personally for me, I think that it's very hard to create a life with someone. So you don't need to necessarily want to create a life with someone, but if you do want to do that and have a partner, I could never see a world for myself where that partner was also giving to other people and or I was getting something from someone else. I think then that would make me question a lot of things. and it wouldn't work for me personally, but I respect it, and I think I totally think it's valid. But I don't think that my perspective is that one person couldn't give me everything. I'm not there yet, but I hope that one day I can be there. And I look at my parents, I'm very lucky that they have a really genuine and great relationship, and it's been that way for years. So I think that is also something else that I look at them and I see what they have, and that's what I want.
I think that's also like something that also I just thought about. Like, I think it's also about like your background. I think you grew up, again, like you said, you grew up with parents that you saw like what real love can be. I don't think that I grew up in that similar situation. I saw a lot of dysfunctional couples, and I think maybe like my wiring was just like, oh, maybe that's just not how we're supposed to do it, because I'm like, if couples A through P aren't doing it well, like maybe there's another way, and maybe that's why I'm a polygamist. But like,
we're all different experiences.
Excuse me.
Let's bring in another POV. This one's about hookup culture. It says, if hookup culture makes you feel like shit, then you don't have to participate in it. That doesn't mean it's toxic for everyone.
I agree.
I don't know. I feel like I've had my era, you know, I have my fair share of like hooking up, and I feel like for me at least, I don't do it anymore. I'm past that stage now, but
Slay.
thank you. But for me, I don't know always why whenever I do it, I always feel so shitty about myself at the end. I'm like, damn, why am I I question myself, why am I doing this? And then sometimes I find myself still going back again and again, you know what I mean? So could you repeat the toxic thing part? I need to understand that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. It said, if hookup culture makes you feel like shit, then you don't have to participate, but that doesn't mean it's toxic for everyone.
You know what? I guess it depends on what they find enjoyment in.
For sure.
So,
and I think maybe this point of view, what I hear oftentimes in the hookup culture debate is like the split between people who think it's empowering to, fully partake in hookup culture versus maybe your experience of like feeling horrible about yourself after, and maybe it's not what you want. Have you experienced that at all? Like, where do you fall on that line of like, is it empowering, or is it actually just not what you want, but you give into it because you're kind of told that's what you have to do?
I think I definitely participated in hookup culture, especially in college. I think there's a lot of pressure to participate in hookup culture. Quickly realized that it wasn't for me, but also, you know me, I'm super freaking sex positive, and I really love it when women find empowerment in like figuring out their sexuality and doing what's best for them sexually. But I just, at the end of the day, it's whatever works best for you. And if you feel like you have complete, absolute consent in hooking up with someone and it's enjoyable, you feel no shame around it, you do you. Personally, that's not for me, because I don't like just like not talking to someone who I've like shared a very intimate experience with afterwards. But I totally respect people who do partake in it.
And I do just want to plug for 1 second. Cece runs an incredible platform called Asians for Sex Positivity, and really breaks down these taboo topics. She was just on a Netflix show with Cara Delevingne talking about it. Wow. Do not quote me on that show. Wrong platform. Breaking down these taboo topics, especially around porn and sex, and bringing sex positivity into the conversation. Would you say you grew up in a sex positive environment? Was that something you talked about? Was it something that was, stigmatized?
No. Only because I grew up in a religious, Islamic household, and even just the topic of when I found out my cousin was pregnant, I was like, why isn't no one really celebrating the pregnancy? Because it's just a kind of a taboo thing. Cause we don't talk about the pregnancy. It's just a celebration when the baby is born.
Interesting.
So it's weird because we know at least pregnancy is sex, but no one talks about sex. It's no one closed doors. You know what I mean? When the sex scene comes on a movie, shut your eyes. You know.
I actually never knew that. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that was culturally something that.
I didn't know that either until I asked the question to my parents. So I'm like, really?
I relate
that's
to
really
that.
Strange.
I relate to that a lot.
I would say for me, growing up in a very Jamaican American household, it is a very much a neutral thing, because I think Jamaicans are very sex positive, or very sexual people. I love sex. Just speaking for myself, right? But they all are also very religious. It's very traditional. like the man is the this, the woman is the that, you do this that way. So like, I would say if you were a heterosexual growing up in a Jamaican household, yes, it was a very sex positive, very like healthy probable experience. Mm-hmm. If you are anything but that, I would say it is very different.
Interesting. Do either of you have similar different experiences?
I mean, I grew up in where sex was not talked about at all. I think that's a very common experience for a lot of East Asian people. And also, never received good sex education in school either. So naturally just found out about sex through pornography, which also isn't a great gateway to learning about healthy sex and boundaries and whatnot. So I had to really do a lot of that learning on my own.
I can relate to that. I mean, as you all know, I'm from Kansas, and my school did not have sex ed. It was like an opt-in after school situation.
Wow.
And you had to go with your parents, and it was so taboo. I just sat in the back and laughed with my friends because it was like this very stigmatized thing. And I remember like I was walking in a Walmart parking lot with my mom, and I stopped her right before we walked in, and I was like, Mom, what is sex? And it's just interesting that I think everyone has their own journey with that. But for me, like I resonate with like what you said about asking the question. Like so often I feel like learning is placed on us. But I don't know, I think we could really benefit from learning about it in an educational setting.
Yeah. I feel like I learned a lot about that stuff at Jewish summer camp, which is where I learned a lot of stuff. But in those like community, like I said, I'm from Long Island and Jewish, and a lot of those community groups that I did growing up, summer camp, Jewish youth groups, things like that is kind of where summer camp really specifically is where like we tested a lot of boundaries. It's like where I had my first kiss, things like that. And when you live in a bunk with a bunch of girls, you start to talk about just things in life, and you have older counselors, not to like promote that you're going to learn about sex or anything at summer camp, but it's kind of where you start to talk about those taboo issues for the first time. And so I feel like that's kind of where the conversation started for me.
Yeah.
Random question. Assuming that we all want kids, like, how are you gonna raise your kid? Like, specifically, like around sex. Like, are you gonna be very like open? Are you gonna be like? How's everyone?
I would be open to talking about it, but only maybe in high school. I think there are stories out there, middle school kids having sex too, but like I think it's not as much as in high school where you see like sometimes they're like teen pregnancies or like there's more likely chance of getting like STIs, things like that. So I feel like for me, I would talk about it once in high school. I feel like that's an appropriate age for them to talk about it.
I defer to you on this one.
Also, I just want to say, I don't know if I want kids, but I've definitely thought about this question a lot. But I think that sex education, especially when you're talking to your kids about it, it's not just about safe sex and using condoms and avoiding pregnancy and penetration. It's not just about talking about the penis and the vagina and how that works and how you make a baby. It's about consent as well, how we are able to stand up for ourselves in sexual experiences and draw boundaries. So when kids are like toddlers around, whenever they can start speaking up for themselves, like teaching them that an adult shouldn't be hugging you without asking you for your permission first. That's an example of teaching them consent, which will then help them have better sex lives once they're adults. And then also I think it's important to teach actual anatomy for kids, especially for young girls. We are like, that's your flower down there, that's your coochie. We need to teach them, like, why are we teaching like them that these, like, their body parts, their vulva is something that they should be ashamed of and that they have to like give little names to. Like, we should actually be, when you're like wiping your kid, like when they go to the bathroom, or like when they ask like, what's that down there, like use the actual correct anatomical words for those body parts.
Random hot take that just came to my mind.
Yeah.
I actually think sex is less intimate than kissing.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I disagree with that.
Such a
I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah, where do you stand?
I don't think I agree with that, especially because I feel like, are you talking about making out or kissing? I guess there's different levels, but if you're just talking about
I'm talking about making out. Like,
okay, because just like a kiss to someone, I think is a very light and it's a public display of affection a lot of times too. So I feel like something private is always a little bit more intimate than something that could be public. You know what I mean? I don't know.
That was a spicy take. I want to bring us back to dating apps for a sec.
Okay.
But we need to keep talking about that hot take. But I want to bring us back to dating apps. I have one other question I want to bring in for y'all. And this actually comes from our partners at Ilic. Today's episode is brought to us by Ilic, which is this amazing, amazing dating app. And I can't wait to tell you a little bit more about them. But first, I want to ask you this question. And it comes right from the team at Ilic. It says, we've heard people say that dating apps kill romance. A statement commonly used by people who do not fancy dating apps. What would you change in a dating app to give it that romantic spark?
Jumping back to what you said earlier, making sure that everyone has to verify who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's just important that I know that what I see is what I'm getting versus whoever walking into the room is just like, oh, I'm Tom. And it's like, no, you're not. So yeah.
Interesting. What else? What would make a dating app more romantic or bring us back to that spark?
I've seen some ideas of like maybe dating apps in specific places. So maybe if it's used as a tool when you're in a place or like I know you can do like your settings of your area, but I don't know, maybe being a little bit more specific can make it more romantic because you can meet up with them in person easier.
I just don't know how romantic you can make it on a digital platform.
Mm.
It just seems like I don't know, I just feel like for a digital platform, it serves the purpose of getting like the surface level stuff out of the way. And if you want to get more deep, that's your opportunity to go meet them in person. But to make it more romantic and have that intimate feeling, it's really challenging to do on a digital platform or on an app.
No, I completely agree. Like, I think like dating apps, they get as romantic as they can.
Yes.
I don't think there's much besides like actually.
Yeah, I don't know if you can
meeting
make it
people.
more romantic, but I think dating apps are a really good use for a first step. Like, I don't think they need to necessarily be more romantic. I think it's a meet cute in a sense.
Yeah.
And then you can take it from there as much or as little as you want.
For sure. I think some apps maybe try to make it more personal by having you list things about yourself that maybe you wouldn't share
Or
on
Okay.
the
Hinge,
first date.
or Hinge with their voice
Yes.
prompts.
Yes.
For sure. But even apps that make you list
Yeah.
your political party. What's your stance on that? Do you think we should be listing our political stances on a dating app?
I think it's
Yeah.
a personal preference if you want to,
Yeah.
and if you want to swipe left on someone who has a opposite political preference.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier to filter out people you want to give a chance versus absolutely not, like swipe left. You know?
Interesting. Okay. I want to bring in one more hot take. You brought up racial preference earlier, and I want to share this point of view. It's actually from TC, so you may have seen this on our social media channels. So,
Racial preference is racist. I was recently dating a guy, and he expressed very aggressively that he would not have intercourse with a black woman because of their hair and skin. And he defended it as it being preference, but really, it's flat out racism.
so that POV comes from Annabelle. I met her in LA. What's your take on that? And is racial preference considered racist when it comes to dating?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, tell me why.
Flat out. I just don't think things are that simple. Like you shouldn't be able to like count out a whole race because like your hair texture. Like that's just that to me it doesn't make sense. I think it's a cop out on just saying I don't like this part. Like I don't like these people. Like just say that. Like I'd rather you be upfront about your racism than you lie and be like it's a preference. No, it's not. Like it's deeper than that.
Does anyone have a different POVs?
I agree ultimately, because as an Asian person, I get a lot kind of the opposite, where people are like, I only date Asian women,
Fetishization.
fetishization and dehumanization. But I can understand when a minority wants to date within their own race. That's when I don't think it's racism. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about why? I just genuinely want to
Personally, that's also currently my experience, where I prefer right now in my life to just date someone who is also East Asian, because I've dated in the past people who are not, and I feel like just more understood, and we have that shared similar background and those cultural values as well. So it just feels like I don't have to constantly like explain myself to someone who's white and how I was raised and what my beliefs are.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I wonder if you connect to this, but like, I feel like I was brought up to feel like I needed to like find an NJB, which is like a nice Jewish boy. Like growing up, like you're supposed to marry someone else who's Jewish, and I think I resonate a lot with like being around someone who gets you immediately. So I resonate with what you shared.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, where I always say when people have like asked, will you only marry a Jew? I always say that I'm open to whatever because you never know
It's flat out racism.
Not racism. No, because you never know what your partner is going to look like until you find them or whatever that may mean. But I think growing up, it was definitely those Jewish values were instilled in me. So I think while I'm looking, I definitely veer that way, but I don't need it to be that way. And from my experience, that's kind of what has happened. And I always think it's an interesting question when people ask me what my type is, because I think there's a difference between my type and what I want. Because I want a lot of things, and I feel like my type is naturally like somebody that is Jewish or some other reasons. So I always say that I'm open, but I think that naturally you can connect with people that have gone through similar experiences than you.
And this reminds me of a point of view from Solana in our community. She wrote, I can admit that I have racial preferences in dating solely because I feel like if you don't experience things personally, you won't understand completely how I feel, which I think resonates with what you shared, Cece. And that's why I think even outside of romantic relationships, we gather together and we gravitate towards people that are like us, which is kind of counterintuitive to our mission, which is I think why it's important for us to get together with people who are different. But I can't knock that for someone else, especially if it comes to like a long-term relationship. So all of your points of view are so valid. We've got so much more to talk about, but let's take another quick break and we'll be right back.
Yay! Your perspective always like
misconceptions out there.
I think it's really important.
Welcome back to POVz.
Sorry.
We'll keep that conversation going. I'm so excited to introduce our celebrity guest today, one of my dear friends who I've actually had the honor of interviewing here on this couch, so she is no stranger to POVz. The amazing, the wonderful, the queen of TikTok content creator, Jess Val Ortiz. Yay!
Let me go around.
Yeah, come around. Come get comfy. We're so happy you're here.
Okay, where's that?
Come in.
Okay, great.
How you doing? Welcome to the show. Obviously today we've been talking a lot about dating. We've all been sharing our POVs when it comes to relationships and sex and monogamy and all the things. All the things. So I have to know, where do you stand on the question of dating apps ruin dating?
All right. Well, I mean, I've been on the dating apps since I was 18. I'm 25 now. And like, it has always been just a disaster for me personally. It's truly ruined my personal self-esteem because a lot of these people like will meet me and like hype me up and then they'll ghost me. And then I'm like, okay, well, what? And so I feel it's just so lied to and betrayed. So most of my experiences from dating apps have been all negative, you know. So
Well, since you mentioned ghosting,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on ghosting, and do you think dating apps have normalized this culture of ghosting people?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what I said about like the, you know, low self-esteem, like you are, you know, believing that you're having this really nice quality relationship with this person, you know, like they're hyping you up, they're telling you you're beautiful and I'd love to, you know, meet you, and then, you know, say you meet and everything goes great, and then the communication just completely breaks off. So it's like, why? Why can't you at least have the decency to tell me that you want to end it? And it's usually never that, especially today, because everyone is too busy or too this or too that. And it's honestly, I think it's ridiculous. I think it is so much just more respectful, and it gives you a much more like peace of mind if you were just to let the person know, hey, like, this isn't going to work. Like, it's not you, you're great, but like, let's just, move on. And,
I think it's interesting because dating apps are obviously an app on social media, and a lot of your other apps are just click through games, and it makes it feel like a game sometimes with ghosting. And it's so easy to like swipe left, swipe right, press a button.
Yeah.
It's so easy opposed to if you are meeting in an organic way or connecting in some other way, it feels more real. Sometimes even if you meet in a dating app, because of the meet cute being a game in a sense, it's like you can easily ghost as a game but it's real feelings involved. So yeah.
Well, I think you go.
Recently I've kind of like co-ghosted someone. So I think it was mutual ghosting. And I think at least for like in that relationship, it was more of just like a mutual like the fire has died. Like it kind of like fizzled out naturally, and we both didn't reach out to each other. So I do think that like ghosting is horrible, but sometimes it is just a very mutual thing where it's just like it's not working.
Yeah.
And maybe we are busy. Maybe I don't know, but like I don't know. I think it depends on the situation. I don't think ghosting is that bad if it really like if I don't know you that well.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I think it's interesting because I think for the most part, and maybe I'm generalizing, but I feel like we can all agree on paper, like ghosting is bad, right? Like we should have good communication skills. We shouldn't leave people hanging. Like if you're going to reject someone, just reject them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like there's this conversation I hear time and time again about the need to set boundaries. And like ghosting is totally okay if it's at the expense of your mental health and navigating those types of situations. Like, have you ever encountered that where like, I don't know, it was a hard decision to make because it was actually good for your mental health to ghost? Or like, I guess, have you had a situation where you've been the ghoster, and what was the intention behind that?
I've definitely ghosted as a young teenager before. I haven't ghosted recently, but that was because I was afraid of confrontation and was afraid of just like rejecting the other person and hurting the other person's feelings, when in reality, like me probably not saying anything hurt them more because they were left there wondering, like, what if, like, what did she think about me, like, why isn't she responding to my texts? So
but is that an answer within itself? If somebody ghosts you, like, it sucks and it's an awful feeling, but is that just the same as you realize, like, all right, well, then that's not for me,
Right.
and it's difficult but a realization. I don't know.
That's interesting.
I speaking from like the perspective of someone with ADHD, object permanence is really important. So sometimes, if I don't see you, it's not even that I'm trying to ghost. It's just that like my brain doesn't like work in the way where I can't. If you're not in my sight line, I just don't even think
Interesting.
about you sometimes. And it's like not to like sound like rude. It's just like the way the brain
I do
functions.
want to bring up a question because like with ghosting, especially, I think it all depends on like how long you've been talking to a person. Like, if you only been talking to, like for a week, maybe a few days, and so, but you're not vibing. Do you owe them that ghosting? Like, do we have to get? You said like, let's not. We don't have to owe that person that thing. Like, hey, we don't need to. It's not working out. Even if it's only for a few days, because it's not like you've invested months into this relationship. It's only been like 1 week, 2 weeks, a few days. Like, are we at the point where it's like we don't have to owe them that,
But
Right.
I think if someone is showing interest in you genuinely and you're no longer interested, like for example, if you go on a first date with someone and you realize, oh, I'm not actually interested in this person, and they're like, oh, we should hang out again, I'm really interested in seeing you and doing a second date, at that point I think you should owe them a little bit of respect and be like, hey, I loved, the date that we went on, but I don't see us going anywhere, and setting that boundary.
For sure.
Like ghosting becoming less of a normal thing in the universe and more of a thing you don't do. Like, why does ghosting need to be normal? Why can't we always have that conversation?
For sure. And Jess, while you're here, I am curious to know what it's like navigating dating in the public eye. I mean, someone who has 9 million people watching your day-to-day life, how has that impacted your dating life?
It honestly it's a little challenging sometimes. Not all the time, because a lot of my content that I make is me just being silly. You know, I don't really make a lot of videos with a lot of other people. So it's the work has been fine, but like whenever we go on vacations or go on trips and stuff, like my partner does not like to be filmed, does not like his face out there. Like no one even really knows his name because like of his job and his privacy, and like he's just a very private person. And I've always been a very open person. Like even before social media is what it is today, like I've always been crazy active on it, putting everything on Facebook, everything on Instagram, YouTube, like everything. And so he knew that coming into the relationship. But we started dating when I didn't even like have really much of a following. I had 90,000 followers on TikTok.
Not
even
as much of a
In comparison, you're right. In comparison, it's nothing for you. You're right there.
And I have like 5K on Instagram. So it's like, you know, it wasn't like how it is today. So it has definitely been, I don't want to say it. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a challenge because I have to be extra censored to like all my surroundings, you know, like in our home, because if there's like pictures of us like sitting, I have to make sure that the pictures aren't in the videos. Like it's really private. But honestly, I really like it because I have my private life with him, my relationship, like I just get to, you know, do my work, and at the end of the day just go home to him and tell him about it and relax and kick back, and it's nice.
I do want to bring up a question. So if you were to do it all over again, like you were like dating from scratch and you had the current followers you had now, when you're looking for a partner, do you want someone that's also in the public eye, so like they know like the lifestyle that you come with, or do you do you still want someone with like that level of privacy?
That's a good question.
I don't even want to think like that because I think this man is going to be the one I marry. I really do. But that's a fair question because then, you know, life is life. So yeah, I really do like the privacy. I like how things are when we go out, and sometimes if someone comes up to me on the street, like, you know, they usually don't bombard him and are like, who are you? Like, it's very much like someone will talk to me and then he'll kind of just stand there and it's nice, and then we move on with our day. So I really do like having that balance. Like when I'm working, like I feel like I do a show or I do an interview and I'm like going nuts. And it's nice to come home to someone who's just like calm and peaceful and is not in the same world. Like I always wanted to try to like date an actor, and I've tried dating actors in the past and they were all nuts and super narcissistic, and I was like, oh my God, this is a nightmare.
Wow.
And now being with someone who is not an actor, it's like fantastic. And I'm like, wow, this is what I needed.
But thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's really great to hear your POV on all things dating. And since you're here, I thought we could play a game.
Yes.
Because you're our special guest. We're going to do a game that we do here on POVz called Could You Coexist? Have y'all seen this on TikTok? It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm going to hand you this whiteboard.
Okay.
And I'm going to hand you this pen. And what you're going to do is you're going to think of someone who ideally we know, like a public figure.
Okay. Yeah.
Who you most strongly disagree with. Like you could not fathom the idea of coexisting with this person.
Right. Okay.
And then we're gonna put to the test if you could coexist.
Okay.
So don't show us your answer.
Okay.
But think of someone.
Think of someone.
In the past, we've gotten Donald Trump. In the past, we've even gotten Dua Lipa. She's been under fire for some anti-Semitic remarks. Yeah. So we've had a range of answers. So think of someone who comes to mind.
Okay, I did.
Okay, you have your person. Okay, so close the marker. Don't show us your answer. And all of us are going to ask different questions that kind of put to the test if you could coexist with this person. So obviously, you will not see the answer. Okay, so sample questions are like, could you see yourself having a meal with this person? Like, ask questions about that kind of test whether Jess could coexist with this person, so everyone can kind of throw them in. So I'll start. If you saw this person on the street, would you ask to take a selfie with them?
No.
Okay.
Are they tall or are they short? Like,
They're like my height.
And try to think of yes or no's.
Can
okay.
can you survive a night with them like as your roommate?
No.
That's a good question.
Could you sit next to them at a show?
Probably not.
Would you let your future child date this
No.
person? Okay.
This person's bad.
If this person were choking in a restaurant, would you give
No.
them the high
I live.
No, I would not.
Oh my
Okay.
god.
If this person asked you out on a date,
No.
and would pay
Sorry, say that again.
and would pay for everything.
No.
If you were a doctor and he was your patient, would you treat him?
No.
Under
oath, if I had to.
Okay.
If I had to.
Could you see yourself having a conversation with this person?
Yes.
Okay, I think it's time. Reveal your person.
Kanye.
You think we can have a conversation?
Oh my god, with earmuffs on.
Okay, wait. Walk us through your process. Why Kanye?
Oh, I mean, he's just been in the media so much about just, of course, the the Jewish comments about all that going on and how, he's just been such a Trump lover and supporter and like everything that's been coming out of his mouth lately has just been nothing but it hasn't made any sense. It's like, I feel like a lot of it is for publicity and for attention, and it's just really, really not cool. And I think that he is, I think a lot of it stems from like jealousy from his own family and the Kardashians and all of that. And he's like, wow, I'm the one who made them. And now they're like skyscrapers now of success, and like he's potentially maybe falling a little bit back behind. So maybe that could have stemmed from insecurity. So he's like, look at me. I don't know where it came from, but it's not cute. And he is nuts. He's a
Snaps to
nutball.
that.
I'm not like a Kanye West fan or anything, but I have like learned a little bit about like his life, just like being like someone that used to be a fan of his music and everything like that. I think it really comes from just like losing his mom.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was kind of where he snapped, and ever since then, which it doesn't make it an excuse because you can't like excuse the sort of like your behavior is your behavior, but I think it does like. As someone who grew up in a single mother household, if I lost my mom, I think I would lose my mind too. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, just a little bit,
Well, thank you for bringing that up. I think that's an important perspective. And Jess, I want to ask one more question about Kanye.
Mm-hmm.
What would it take for you to coexist with him?
Money.
All of it.
All of the money. Yeah, I like having conversations and connections with people who are very present and understand the world that we live in today, and I don't think he does. And I think that it's really sad, and I think he's a very selfish, needy person, and that's like just the biggest turnoff for me personally. And I want to have engaging, life-changing conversations with people, not something that could be a headline for a news article.
I hear that.
I think also Kanye is radical in
Yeah.
his decisions, and I think it's important to have conversations, but it's hard to have conversations sometimes with people that are pretty radical and stubborn. And that's why we need to more and more have open conversations with people that are willing to listen and not necessarily agree. But when you see the way that Kanye acts on social media, and especially as a Jewish person and all the anti-Semitic comments and the hate and the radical hate that he has shown, I think is a scary thing. And it's hard to want to be open and willing with somebody that has that hate opposed to somebody that has a conflicting opinion, and you can maybe talk about it.
Sure.
Plus that hate also incites people to also follow them in their hate, and it makes
Yeah.
it very like normalized, and I don't like that.
Hate is very different than disagreeing.
Yes.
We could talk about that for hours. That keeps me up at night.
Yes.
But
Really.
what I'll say is I think it really takes the right environment to have the right conversation, which I think is something that we all were able to create together today. So Jess, I'll take the whiteboard. But I do want to just kind of wrap up our conversation today by kind of getting a little pulse check. Like, How did everyone feel after this conversation? Do you feel like your point of view is the same as it was when you walked in the door? What are you leaving with today?
I loved it. I understand everyone's point of view was great, and I think you brought up a great point. We'll talk about being polyamorous, and that topic, because depending on how someone grew up, we have a certain ideology. Because for me, I grew up in an Islamic household, so men can have multiple spouses, up to 4, and I don't think a lot of people know that. So you would think sometimes, I understand the idea of being in a polyamorous relationship, but there's also saying that God made us in pairs. So there's you're meant with one person with a partner. So it's from my personal experience, I've always grown up with just, having one partner, and you should stick with one partner, but I've also seen from other people that they have multiple spouses as well.
That's super
Men
interesting.
can have multiple partners, but women
no.
Double
cannot.
standard.
Yeah, it's
Super interesting.
That one.
Just to illustrate kind of our mission, to me, that was such an echo chamber breaking moment, because I wasn't even aware that in Islam you could have multiple partners. And I think that totally impacts the way you see the world based on how you're raised. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Did anyone else have a moment similar to that where maybe it helped them better understand something, or what else are you leaving with today?
I think what you said earlier about just, I don't know why I just blanked, but about people that want to date within their race, ethnic people that want to date within their race. I think it's not echo chamber breaking for me, but it was the best way I've heard it put. So I just wanted to kind of applaud you for putting it in such beautiful words.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Also, I just want to say that initially we all disagreed about whether or not we thought dating apps are good for dating, or are killing dating. But we actually ended up agreeing on a lot of other things as well, which us 4 as well, just agreeing on communication is key. We maybe should stop ghosting people.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, because I also feel like a lot of times when I talk about relationships or dating, it's really just things going on with my friends, and it's very light and funny, but we don't really talk about the things, the issues, and you don't dig deep into it. So now I feel like I'm spiraling a bit in a good way, hearing from all of the different perspectives, and it's nice to kind of connect that everybody has their trials and tribulations with dating, and that we're all kind of going through it. Whether or not you're in a relationship for years, you still are learning more about that relationship, or if you're in a relationship for a day. So it's kind of nice to hear from everyone.
Absolutely. Jess, any final thoughts?
It's crazy, because I usually don't talk a lot about my relationship in a public setting because it is so private. But it is something that I do really appreciate, and I love learning about, and I love, especially a lot of my friends after college, because I went to Penn State, and it's kind of traditional there. A lot of my friends after college, after they moved to New York City, and found themselves truly for who they are, and found their life partner or partners. It's really amazing to learn about that, and learn that is something that is special for everyone. And so I really appreciate, sitting here and hearing about all of your guys' experiences and dating pasts and potentially future. So thank you for educating me a little bit more about all this. And I just hope that everyone lives happily ever after, no matter what.
If anybody has any recommendations, let me know.
Well, Jess, we so appreciate you being here, and I so appreciate all of you being here. The way I want to close out our time together today is by just reminding, I need this reminder myself. We preach unity. That's our message. It's our mission here at TC. But there's no way we can really unify after one single conversation. We can expand our minds, we can learn new things, we can better understand each other, but unity and unifying is a process. So as you leave today, I'd love to ask you a yes or no question. And I think this question really puts that unifying mentality to the test, because if we can commit to continuing this conversation after today, I think we get one step closer to what that unified world looks like. So are y'all willing and are you down to continue this conversation?
Yes.
Yeah,
of
Absolutely.
course.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Okay, well,
I'm in.
if we're all down, let's exchange numbers. We'll start a group text. And I'm just so grateful you all were here. Thank you so much for being a part of our mission to unify the world. And of course, to our partners at Highly, an amazing dating app that, oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're such an amazing platform that makes conversations both easier and more meaningful for all of us, which is something I know I can get behind. That's what our mission is all about. So thank you, Highly, and thank you to all of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And I have to end by saying we can't unify without you and I.
Oh.
So let's exchange numbers and we'll start the group text.
Okay.
Okay, go.
My phone is like,
I love it.
Hey, it's Ian Gates from the Conversationalist community. Thanks so much for watching our POVz episode on dating. The best part about TC is that we want to hear from everyone's point of view, including yours. Just text the word SHOW to 1-877-222-1119 to get access to all things TC, and we hope to feature you in a future episode. See you next time.